political candidate and later while serving in office. They believe she first applied for pandemic unemployment benefits in June 2020. At the time, she was running for a state house seat and claimed she was unemployed because Henry County schools had closed. Prosecutors say that information was false. They say she'd not worked for the school system since briefly serving as a substitute teacher in 2018, and that her employment agreement specifically said substitutes were not eligible for unemployment pay. Now, according to this indictment, Henderson continued certifying weekly benefits into mid-2021, including 8 filings made after she was sworn into office as a state representative for District 113. During those filings, officials say she repeatedly claimed she was unable to work because of pandemic-related issues, but investigators say those statements allowed her to receive $17,811 in benefits she was not entitled to. Now, she is expected to plead not guilty when she appears in federal court today. We'll continue to keep you updated on this story. I do want to keep you updated on another story that's been making headlines here around the Georgia area, North Georgia, and of course in our newsroom. It's one that we've been following closely, and it involves a father who was shot and killed outside of a Bojangles Sunday afternoon. Investigators believe he was coming to the aid of his daughter. Our Kevin Stewart's trying to get more information as to how this all unfolded. And Kevin, this is a real tragedy.
Yeah, it's something that a lot of people can relate to, particularly if you're a parent. I can tell you that this all happened a little more than 24 hours ago here in Palmetto at this Bojangles, which does remain closed. We had a chance to talk to the company today, and they said they don't know when it will reopen. Also today, the suspect in this case, Maurice Evans, he was supposed to make his first appearance from the Fulton County jail, but that hearing, we understand his was waived today. I want to give you an idea about Mr. Evans here. We understand that police say Evans shot Dominique Goodman, the victim, in the parking lot after he came here to help his daughter, who worked at Bojangles. Family says the victim's daughter was being picked on by Evans, who is described as her shift manager. That's when the confrontation between Evans and Goodman broke out, and Goodman ended up being shot. We do have a fuller statement from Bojangles. It says, quote, "Our hearts go out to the victim and all those impacted by this senseless act. The safety of our guests and team members is always our top priority. We strongly condemn all acts of violence." Customers and people who work in the area are stunned.
I was shocked when the manager of Dairy Queen told me what occurred yesterday. I was shocked. He was shocked himself. I was shocked at how quickly things could escalate. A person could make a decision like that and end somebody's life.
Now, I did have a chance to talk to someone at Goodman's job. He was a car salesman in Morrow, and they say this was a great guy, a guy who really, the sky was the limit, someone who his life was going in the right trajectory, straight up, and was, involved in certain things and just kind of like really was taking his life in the right direction. In fact, he was described as the top salesman at that dealership. Ariel?
Kevin, just awful. I'm curious, do we know any more about the nature of that altercation or fight between his daughter and her shift supervisor, the man who's now been arrested for this crime? Was it physical? Was it verbal?
No, we don't know. That's what we're trying to get a little bit more details than what police were able to provide yesterday. We stopped by the police headquarters to try to talk to the chief. We understand he's been running around, and we're going to try to catch up with him again. But this has been described as basically the dad, the victim, Dom, coming here to check on an incident after his daughter called him. And when he got out here, as we reported yesterday, a family member talked to our Annie Mapp and said that the guy immediately shot. So we've got to sort out all of those things, and hopefully we'll get another update coming up for you live on Fox 5 News at 4.
Yeah, Kevin, just awful. I mean, I think a lot of parents can relate to getting a text or a call from their child in need and dropping everything to go check it out, make sure that they get the help they feel they need. Before I let you go, Kevin, any final questions that really stick out to you on this story that you really want to get answered or you think that people should be aware of?
Well, I think the main thing is if police have charged the suspect here with murder, then clearly something that you kind of want to be careful about here is there a self-defense argument to be made? Obviously, you would think that that's what the suspect is going to try to argue. So that's why it's important to kind of know, okay, what exactly happened when they got out here into this parking lot. But clearly, it escalated way too quickly, and I think that's something that I think no matter how this plays out, there should have been some cooler heads that prevail. So that's something that we want to try to dig more into. Ariel?
Yeah. Kevin, excellent point. Thank you so much for your reporting, letting us know where this story stands. We'll check it in with you again later on. Thank you. Okay, guys, I want to continue to keep you updated on some other stories happening today. And one of the big ones involves Georgia Democrats actually holding a news conference today talking about what can be done from a state level to make sure Georgians can afford health care. As you know, subsidies for the Affordable Care Act are set to expire at the end of this year. And our Deidre Dukes was live there for that conversation while they held this news conference. And Deidre, what's the action that lawmakers are really looking for?
Well, Minority Senate Leader Harold Jones said that America is facing a health care affordability crisis. And so he is urging state lawmakers to do what they can to provide a safety net of sorts for Georgians who are in need of some relief from rising health care premiums in the event that Congress fails to extend the Affordable Care Act premium tax credits, rather. Now, Senate Bill 192 was introduced last legislative session by Senator Jason Estevez. The bill would create a state-based health insurance affordability program, and the goal is to help keep coverage affordable if federal Affordable Care Act premium tax credits expire at the end of the year. And right now, many Georgians receive federal subsidies that lower monthly insurance costs, and if those federal dollars go away, premiums could rise sharply for many families. So Senate Bill 192 aims to soften that impact by establishing state-funded premium assistance that would help ensure people can continue accessing affordable health insurance. Now, during today's press conference, we heard from some individuals who talked about how they have seen their premiums really increase, and they're very fearful for what they're going to do, saying that it's going to come down to paying bills, paying the mortgage, paying rent, or paying for their health care costs.
And I opened that letter, and it said that my insurance premium was going from $86 a month to $522 a month. My heart skipped a beat, y'all, because let's be honest, no matter how hard you budget, no matter how careful you are, there's just no room for a $436 increase, not with rent, utilities, groceries, and certainly not with a new mortgage on the horizon.
Now, Democratic lawmakers do say that they hope that this will be taken care of there on Capitol Hill, and that Congress will extend that tax credit and avert this crisis. But at the same time, they say this legislation was introduced last year. It didn't go anywhere. They are going to continue work this year to get this legislation passed, but they're saying hopefully it won't be needed and that Congress will take some sort of steps. But they are very concerned as to how, if they fail to do so, how it could impact Georgians here.
Deidre, it makes sense. You know, they're wanting to make sure they get ahead of the curve on this. I understand it's Senate bill, the state Senate Bill 192, and that's what they're trying to get this funding through. As you're looking at this, you know, is this kind of a bipartisan push? Is this really on state Democrats who want this done? What are you hearing?
It's solely on state Democrats' parts. In fact, that's one thing that we did ask them during this news conference. You know, what's different last year compared to as they head into this legislative session, if they have talked to some of their Republican colleagues, is there some behind-the-scenes talks, negotiations possibly, where they have seen some support that could make this bill a reality, could lead to the passage of this legislation, and we didn't hear any of that. It's clear from the conversation that was had during the news conference that this still is very much a Democratic push. We also talked to a Republican lawmaker to get his reaction to what we heard during this news conference, and we're going to have that for our viewers starting at 4 o'clock on Fox 5 News.
Awesome. Deidre, thank you so much. You know, I think as we continue to look at this, a lot of people are just wondering how they're going to make ends meet. And at the end of the day, they want to understand what their lawmakers are going to do to try to help make it better. So thanks, Deidre, so much for joining the conversation. I'll let you go get warm now. Okay, guys, we're going to move on here because coming up in just a little bit, we actually are going to get more information from Fulton County officials about a election incident. And you're actually taking a live look there in the upper left corner of your screen from the Fulton County headquarters. This is actually the Board of Registration and Elections, and they're meeting talking about an incident that happened during last week's December 2nd runoff election. We understand that Fulton County Board of Commissioner Chairman Rob Pitts is going to speak to reporters and give a brief update about this incident. So we hope to learn more about what unfolded, why leaders are concerned in just a little bit. When I see that this pops up for you guys live and it looks like we might be ready to go, we'll come back to this and I'll bring it to you live. In the meantime, let's go take a look at the White House because another announcement that we are expecting today comes from President Donald Trump, and we expect the president to make a big announcement on the future of artificial intelligence. A key part of the Big Beautiful Bill was banning AI regulation by states for 10 years. This was taken out due to widespread bipartisan concerns. But now President Trump says he's going to sign an executive order reinstating the ban. The president claims there needs to be federal oversight of AI, not state-by-state patchwork laws that could create security risks and stifle innovation. So basically, the president is expected to sign a one-rule executive order on AI bypassing United States, or rather state approvals in all of this. And one of the things the president has vowed is he wants to unleash AI competitiveness, but remove state oversight in order to make sure that things can stay safe. And there's one way that we proceed in our learning and understanding of this new intelligence. However, the key thing here is whether or not this is going to be legal in the long run. It is expected to be challenged by states, notably Republican lawmakers who don't want federal oversight and would rather have states maintain that control. The initiative has really divided some members of the Republican Party, which has traditionally strongly supported the rights of states and a smaller federal government. So when I see the president come out, we'll bring this to you live. It does not look like they are ready yet by any means, but we are expecting this announcement at some point today. Another story I want to continue to keep you guys updated on involves a travel ban that is expected to extend to more than 30 countries here in the United States. The United States, or actually Department of Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem made this announcement today, saying that the Department of Homeland Security is going to extend its travel ban list for some citizens from more than 30 countries. The additional bans are going to build on travel ban restrictions for countries that were already up to 19. Countries that have been affected by the restrictions include Afghanistan, Somalia, Iran, Haiti, and others. And this announcement comes after 2 National Guard members were shot in Washington, D.C. We've told you guys a little bit about this travel ban, and now they are extending it on the federal level. November 26th, we know that alleged suspect, Afghani suspect, Rahmullah Lakhanwal, was the one that prosecutors believe attacked 2 National Guards members in Washington, D.C., killing one of them. He immigrated here to the United States from Afghanistan, and prosecutors believe he was radicalized at some point since then. Kristi Noem says President Donald Trump is still considering additional countries to add to that ban. It's not known when these additions will go into effect, but we'll continue to keep you updated as soon as we learn any new information. Another update that I want to tell you guys about involves the price of beef, because if you've been to the grocery store, you may have noticed that what you're paying for beef, anything from steak to ground beef, is up. And a group of federal advisors are now working to help lower beef prices. A Wall Street Journal report says President Trump assembled a team of advisors, including Agricultural Secretary Brooke Rollins. And the goal is to find ways to combat inflation in the cost of beef. The Labor Department reports the average price for ground beef rose to nearly $6.50 a pound as of September. Along with advisor meetings, Trump has called for the Justice Department and Federal Trade Commission to investigate potential anti-competitive pricing and antitrust practices in the industry. With thinning cattle herds linked to rising beef prices, so a lack of supply, the administration is discussing reopening cattle imports from Mexico or importing Argentinian beef to help lower prices. So this is something we're going to keep an eye on and let you guys know about if there are any major updates. We also want to tell you a little bit about the layoffs that are happening in the job market because, according to a new report, layoffs here in the United States have reached their highest levels since the pandemic. Employers have announced nearly 1,200,000 jobs were cut this year through November, and it's an increase of 54% from the same period last year, where there were almost 800,000 layoffs. That amount was announced then last year. And the data comes from a report by Challenger, Gray and Christmas. This year's layoffs were the highest since the pandemic, and 2020 saw 2.2 million jobs cut during the same time frame. U.S. employers announced that more than 71,000 layoffs occurred last month, and that's down 53% from October. So this is an issue that we hear a lot of you guys talking about, and we're going to, as we continue here in our live hour, I'm going to continue to monitor our stock market and see if we can check in on that in a little bit. But in international news, I want to let you know about what's happening with the peace talks between Russia and Ukraine, because at this point, the peace talks do appear to be on the brink of collapse, really hanging on by a thread. There were difficult conversations that happened between Ukrainian officials and Special Envoy Steve Witkoff. Russian airstrikes on civilian targets are intensifying, and this happened while U.S. officials were speaking with Ukrainian officials in Miami over the weekend. President Trump says he's not happy with Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky and his latest response to the American peace proposal. This adds pressure as the negotiations are slowly moving forward, but President Trump says he doesn't think that Zelensky has read the proposal. There were indications over the weekend that President Trump is preparing to walk away from the talks if they remain stalled. Despite the diplomatic back and forth, the White House does say it is close to making a final deal. That's something that we've been hearing for a long time now. The Ukrainians emerged from a call this weekend saying there were major sticking points still remaining. And one of the things that they're taking a look at, of course, is how much territory to cede to Russia. The Kremlin says it still wants, quote, radical changes to the agreement, including the annexation of much of eastern Ukraine, a concession already ruled out by Zelensky. And we do know that Zelensky is meeting with British, French, and German leaders in the United Kingdom today, hoping to rally support as these talks continue. So we'll continue to keep you updated as we see this diplomatic process unfold between Russia, Ukraine, and the United States. Also unfolding on Capitol Hill is lawmakers continuing to call for greater transparency and, at this point, the release of the video showing a second strike on an alleged Venezuelan drug boat. Lawmakers in Washington are pressuring the Pentagon to release this video of a second United States military strike. It happened on the suspected drug boat in the Caribbean in September. And as we've been telling you guys, this killed 2 survivors of an initial strike. For 3 months now, the United States military has targeted boats in the Caribbean and Eastern Pacific, taking out alleged cartel members smuggling drugs here into the U.S. Democratic lawmakers have questioned the operation's legality since the beginning, and they're growing louder after learning survivors of a strike were killed in a follow-up. Some Republicans also have concerns, but a majority of the party is backing President Trump and his mission to stop the flow of drugs. A number of lawmakers say they're deeply disturbed after watching video of this so-called double tap strike, and they want it released. They want the public to see it. When Fox News asked Secretary of War Pete Hegseth if he'd commit to releasing the full video, he says it's still under review, and he says military leaders are weighing whether or not a release of the video would compromise the ongoing mission. He says he continues to stand by the strike in question, and so far the United States has carried out 22 known strikes on these alleged drug boats, killing at least 86 people. Secretary Hegseth does say they will continue. And it's been some time since I've gotten you guys an update as to what's happening in the Middle East between Israel and Hamas. So at this point, we actually do know that both sides are getting closer to the next phase of the ceasefire. When that deal was initially struck, there were two big phases for Israel and Hamas to get through in the peace plan. And officials say the second stage of this peace plan could be just as challenging as the first. But the Red Cross has been helping Hamas search for the bodies of the last remaining deceased Israeli hostages in Gaza. And with the Red Cross's help, Hamas was able to locate the last body of a deceased hostage in Gaza, 24-year-old Ron Gavil, a police officer that was killed in the October 7th attack. After his body is returned, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says the second phase of President Trump's peace plan can move forward. UN Ambassador Mike Waltz arrived in Israel today to advance the next stage of this ceasefire. Several key issues do remain unresolved, like the disarming of Hamas. Over the weekend, though, and this is pretty significant, senior Hamas official Bassam Naim said the group is ready to discuss freezing or storing its weapons as part of the ceasefire. There are concerns about the deployment of an international security force in Gaza. Several countries, including Indonesia, have offered to contribute troops to the region to help with this effort, but the group's exact makeup and responsibilities have yet to be clearly defined. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is expected to meet with President Trump at the end of this month to discuss the next phase of the peace plan and what that is going to look like. So we'll continue to keep you guys updated. Coming up, I'm going to get a check of your weather forecast. We're going to check in with meteorologist Jonathan Stacy. And I also want to let you know about some restaurant closures that seem to be affecting here in the Atlanta metro. If you've noticed your favorite restaurant closing, it could be because of high prices. We at least spoke to two restaurants, and we're going to talk about that with Rob DiRienzo coming up. Welcome back in, you guys. I'm Ariel Onstadt, and it is lovely to be here streaming with you on your Monday afternoon. We're live on YouTube. If you've got questions about any of the stories we're covering, or you want us to cover something, you want an update on a story you saw, let me know. I'll figure it out for you. Just put it in our YouTube chat or TikTok, wherever you're streaming along with us, and we'll get to you. Okay, so if you've stepped outside today, it does feel cold. It's dreary, it's gray, and some of you have been asking what the temperatures are going to look like in the long run, so let's send it over to meteorologist Jonathan Stacy for a check of your weather.
Clouds continue to dominate the day. Hopefully we can crack some space in them by evening, but if not by evening, definitely by tomorrow afternoon. You can see here any rain that we had earlier this morning is now pushed to the east, and it's running into some colder air as it climbs up the eastern seaboard and for even portions of North Carolina, but certainly the Virginias. They're dealing with their second batch of snow for the season. No wintry weather for us. By 6 o'clock, you can see here temperatures already falling down from their highs somewhere close to 50 degrees. By 6 o'clock, we're at 45 here in Atlanta, 43 Canton, 46 Eaton, the same for Athens, 41 in Cornelia. You've already snuck down into the high 30s here in Blairsville. Everybody's going there as we go through the overnight hours. We'll stop the clock at midnight. Shift workers bundle up. You won't have to worry about the rain, but you'll have to worry about the cold air. Temperatures feeling like they're already near freezing even before we cross over into a new day. New day, new problems? Well, same old problems like Sunday. Fog will likely move in, especially if those winds settle down out east, but with the wind still going, I don't think fog will be as prevalent as it was Sunday. This morning we had fog across the far northern tier, and once again, that will be an area that we'll be watching down across the metro area and for points out to the east along 85 and 20. By and large, it's just a frigid start to the morning. By noon, we can see here things are starting to warm up ever so carefully here. By the time we get to the noon hour, we're at 46 degrees, so still below average, with a hope of hitting a high temperature of 50 degrees here in Atlanta, 52 in Rome. But here's what you have. You have plenty of sunshine, and I think the sunshine is going to help us out. Temperatures are going back down to the 30s to kick off Wednesday morning, but Wednesday afternoon, that's when we're going to bring out something called the 60s. Meanwhile, your chances for rain, they're fairly meager. Over the next few days, we're going to have dry conditions taking over the area. This isolated chance for a shower on Thursday is indicated by a frontal passage, and then another frontal passage tries to sneak in next Monday. Those fronts are just going to kind of rework the atmosphere and knock the temperature down. So we'll reach a high of 60 degrees on Monday, but then it will fall to 55 degrees by afternoon for Thursday, 57 for Friday after another front moves through. The mornings are going to be frigid no matter how you shake it, especially with the absence of thick cloud cover. Plenty of sunshine for the weekend after another front rolls through, but I think that one will definitely do a doozy on us as it knocks the temperatures back down into the 30s, and by afternoon, we'll struggle to break past the 50-degree mark.
All right, well, that was meteorologist Jonathan Stacy giving us an update on our forecast. And I want to get you guys out now to Fulton County leaders who are updating on a recent elections incident. It looks like the news conference is now happening live, so let's go ahead and listen in.
We later learned by Saturday that we're not present at the precinct location. We reported it on the 2nd to the Secretary of State. The Secretary of State is involved in investigating it, and the Fulton County Police Department are involved in investigating it. What is important to note is that our processes and procedures that were in place in Fulton County are working. We, last year, posted notices that said, essentially, if you see something, say something. So even if it's a worker for Fulton County, report it immediately, and that's what happened. It was reported immediately, we caught it, and we were able to take immediate action. We are in the process of working with the Secretary of State and providing more information, but that is what we're here for to talk about today. Why did we have a recount? We had a recount because there was discrepancy and irregularity in a couple of races, and that was for Atlanta Public School District 6 and Public School District 8 at large. But in order to assure the voting public and the candidates that there was nothing that was not, when we reported our results, that the election results were correct, we did an entire recount of the entire municipal runoff election. We are in the process of doing that right now, and they're finishing that up today.
So, just, real quick, this time we'll bring up Fulton County. Just one moment.
Hey, Ken Cheely, Deputy Chief, Fulton County Police Department. The Fulton County Police Department and the Secretary of State's office are actively investigating this incident, but due to it is an active investigation, we're unable to comment any further at this time.
Okay, and as Chair of the Board of Commissioners, you always hear me say I've been involved in a number of elections throughout my career. And first and foremost, there is no such thing as a perfect election. There's always a possibility of mechanical failure or human failure. But the good news here is that our elections, the processes that we have in place, they worked. This situation was caught and it was immediately addressed. So I'd just like to thank the chair of our board, Ms. Nadine Williams, for being on top of this, keeping me informed, and want to assure and ensure to say to the public that elections.
Okay, guys, you're listening in live as Chairman Rob Pitts, County Commissioner, updates on an incident that happened with the December 2nd runoff election. You can see we have Police Chief there from Fulton County and others updating on an incident regarding fraud that happened with that election. So there was a recount that happened. They said there was an irregularity in the vote. Our Angelique Proctor is going to be updating more on this situation coming up at 3 o'clock. So we're going to check back in with this story. But at this point, Fulton County leaders say they were able to catch the issue and they are mitigating it and were able to do a recount of the vote. So we'll continue to keep you updated. You guys, in the meantime, I want to move on to a story that has a lot of you talking on social media, and that is the closure of a restaurant that you may have seen here in the Atlanta area. Maybe you've been before in Cabbagetown. It's the Agave restaurant, and they say they're closing because of high prices and other factors that's just making things really difficult. Rob DiRienzo out joining us live, getting the updates on this story. Rob, I feel like I see a lot of discussion about this on social media. People sad to see them go, and it's not just Agave that's feeling the squeeze in all this.
Hey, that's right, Ariel. Good afternoon to you. That's right. Agave is up the road. We're here at Daddy D's Barbecue, sort of a staple here in downtown Atlanta. Well, they just announced that they're closing their doors at this location, but for a slightly different reason. They say that the landlord here is looking to sell this property, but they say they are also feeling the pinch. But I want to show you what it's looking like. You can see these guys loading up the fire pit. It is seen a pretty steady crowd all day. Now, a lot of these restaurants are saying the big reason here is the economy. Here at Daddy D's, again, they say that's a factor, but the main reason is the business owner selling. Now, the owners up the road at Agave, as you mentioned, up the road in Cabbagetown, say their last day will be on January 31st, and they cite, quote, current economic climate and unsustainable conditions. Now, Daddy D's owner, Christiana Coker-Jackson, says their main reason is the landlord selling the property, but they've also been feeling this economic pinch. Listen.
Every restaurant knows, I don't care if it's a big chain or a small chain, you know, the beef prices, for example. I was paying $2.84 for a pound of brisket, and now it's $4.99, $5.50, anywhere in there. And at one point it was $7, you know, so we do feel the strain. We do feel the economic impact from things like that. You know, there's no way we can't. You know, when oil prices go up, it affects plasticware, you know, plastic bags.
And Ariel, as you mentioned, this is not the only two restaurants, even throughout Atlanta, that are closing their doors with the new year coming. On Saturday, Dantana's in Buckhead said goodbye after 2 decades. Now, on December 20th, Alma Cochina's Buckhead location will also close after 6 years. And that will also be the last day for Eats on Ponce after more than 30 years, which, again, is just an Atlanta institution. And back out here live, you can see I'm dying for Daddy D's, the barbecue joint, over here on the corner of MLK and Memorial Drive. There is so much history and so many stories behind these walls. So there's a lot of bittersweet feelings throughout Atlanta, especially the people who have been going to these restaurants seemingly for decades. Now, coming up tonight at 5, I'm talking to an Emory University marketing professor that talks a little more about the trend that we're seeing both here in Atlanta and across the country. So be sure to join us for that, Ariel.
Yeah, Rob, you know, I think you mentioned some restaurants. I was just thinking off the top of my head, like Dantana's, you know, there were others that were coming to mind. Like, wow, there really are a lot of restaurants that are closing. And for so many people, this is where you might have, you know, work trips. Maybe you gather, it's a neighborhood spot like Daddy D's, you know, with friends and family. Definitely sad to see them go. But I am really curious, and I think a lot of others are too, just, you know, is there one single overarching factor here, or is it a bunch of little things contributing? It does kind of seem like maybe like the economic outlook. People are making different decisions, from landlords to the businesses that are deciding how to stay in business. So maybe you'll learn more about that from the marketing professor. But do you think there's any one factor, or is it more like a few different things that's just causing an environment?
Well, it seems like the economy is a factor in each of these businesses' decisions. Again, Eats on Ponce mentioned something similar. This is really all about, it seems like, costs, labor costs. Again, you heard costs of beef in that soundbite. So all of this is just kind of these straws that slowly break the camel's back, so to speak. Especially, I was speaking with that Emory University professor earlier. She mentioned that, COVID was really a litmus test for so many of these restaurants, and a lot of them didn't fully recover after COVID. A lot of them have been hanging on by a thread as a lot of consumers' habits have changed. A lot more people work from home now. A lot of other people just prefer to get DoorDash, don't prefer to go and sit down at an old mom and pop restaurant like they used to before the pandemic. So it seems like it's culminating factors. Again, here the landlord, their desire to, with this hot piece of Atlanta real estate, that's a factor here at Daddy D's, but it seems like across the board, just the cost of doing business is getting to be prohibitive for some of these business owners.
Rob, thanks so much for giving us this overview, making it make sense and breaking it down. You know, cost of beef, we actually were talking about that in the beginning of our hour. The president's put together an advisory panel to figure out how they can bring beef prices down. So, you know, it's not just here in Atlanta, everyone's feeling it. Rob, thank you. I appreciate our conversations. Okay, guys, we're going to move on here because we need to move on to something that's going to affect a lot of us here coming up in 2026. That is the FIFA World Cup. And we want to understand what these games are going to mean for Atlanta and what it's going to do for hospitality here in our city. So I'd like to bring in President Paul Kane of On Location. Paul, you're the president of On Location. You're the official hospitality provider for the FIFA World Cup. Thanks so much for joining us this afternoon.
Thanks, Ariel. It's good to see you.
Awesome. Okay, so Paul, I think people largely are getting a picture, at least here in Atlanta, that the FIFA World Cup is going to be a big deal. It's going to be reminiscent of the Olympics when they came to Atlanta. But give us kind of an overview. We hear a lot about what this can do for an economy, what it means for people who are going to come and visit and see our city for the first time. What's your impression of how this will put us on the map?
Well, Atlanta is already on the map when it comes to sports. I mean, you already have some of the best sports teams there, and it's a great location for big global events. You saw that in the Olympics. We've had NCAAs there. We've had Super Bowls, and now you're going to have a World Cup. When a World Cup or anything of that scale comes into any city, especially Atlanta, it's good for the economy. I mean, I just heard you talking about the restaurants, but this is where restaurants thrive. People come from all over the world to see the best of sports, especially something as big in scale as the World Cup. So we expect the economy to have a real positive hit from that.
So I understand, you know, a lot of people are, as it makes sense, going to be looking for a place to stay. They're going to be looking at how they can book, you know, maybe hotels, Airbnbs. What's your advice for people who are on either side of that? How can they make sure they have a successful World Cup experience?
Well, if you want to go to the World Cup, certainly if you're in market or out of market, you want to go and have a trusted advisor or a trusted partner who's going to help you get access to that kind of inventory. So someone like On Location. So On Location is the official hospitality partner to the FIFA World Cup. We do that also for the Olympics. We do it for the Super Bowls. We do it for the NCAAs. We do it for major golf and tennis events. We are the official hospitality provider to the world's largest events. When you go with the official, then you know you're getting best pricing. You're also getting best product. You know, whether it's hotels, transportation, excursions, but more importantly, seats and hospitality within the venues, all of which is taken care of by a trusted partner who is working within the walls of the World Cup, not outside of it.
You have like the inside baseball to be able to advise people on where they should go and create the best package. So how can people learn more about a package if they're trying to book something like this for the World Cup?
So if you want to go to the World Cup, you go to FIFA Hospitality website, or you go to onlocationexp.com. Either one goes to the same place, but where you online can look through some of the options that are available to you. And if you want something that's either more complex or more developed, inclusive of other outside of the venue opportunities, then you call the phone number or fill out one of the forms on the website, and one of our concierge sales reps will be in touch with you. Either way, now's the time to do it, because to get regular tickets, you have to be in the lottery, and if you're lucky enough to get in the lottery, great, get your tickets. That's the best way to go. The other way is to go with a hospitality partner. We go on our websites, on the FIFA hospitality website or on location, exp.com, and then go and see what's available to you. Up until the draw, which happened last Friday, there was a lot of people looking for tickets, and we've sold through a lot of our tickets already. But since the draw, the interest level has gotten to an extreme high. So this is the moment to start buying. And you have the most available inventory right now to select the matches, as well as the cities, and also your seat location.
Makes sense, Paul, because, maybe you have a team you really want to follow, and they're not going to play here in Atlanta. If you're a Team USA fan, as of right now, Team USA is in Group D, and they're not really going to face anybody here in Atlanta just yet. So, if that were to change, obviously would be breaking news here in Atlanta. But as of now, if you have a team you want to see, maybe making sense to get in on your packages early, understanding what's available to you now rather than later, so you can make sure you have the experience you want would be helpful. So, Paul, thank you so much for joining us, making sense of all of this. We appreciate your time.
Thanks for having me. Have a great day.
Thanks, Paul. Okay, guys, coming up, we are going to check in on an announcement from President Trump. We have some other stories to get to. That's coming up. Welcome back. I'm Ariel Onstad. Thanks so much for streaming along here with us. I'm looking over to my right at all of our screens, and I see that the president is up live and is speaking, making his announcement. So let's go ahead and listen in.
Sell their products and pass it on to the next generation, that this bridge is absolutely necessary based on where we are right now. So as the president said, we are very pleased to announce that today we are going to be effectuating an $11 billion bridge payment to our farmers. The money will move by February 28th of 2026, but by the end of this month, so just in the next couple of weeks, every farmer that is able to apply for it will know exactly what that number looks like. So as you are going to your lender, as you are working to ensure and understanding what you can plant for next year, you will have that number in hand. And we will continue to talk to our farmers, continue to understand exactly what this looks like and what is necessary. The final thing I'll say is,
12 billion.
Well, we're holding $1 billion back. So today we are announcing $11 billion. We are holding $1 billion back just to ensure that we are covering. So today's announcement covers all of our row crops, but some specialty crops and others that we are still working with to best understand where they are in the farm economy and ensure that we're making every forward-moving position that we need to. And then finally, as we move to this new golden age for agriculture and for rural America, as we continue to fight for these farmers and ranchers, their way of life, and those that are represented here represent hundreds of thousands of farmers across this country. Just know that this president, I have never been around anyone who every time we talk, he asks, how are my farmers? Every single time. So we will never...
Okay, you're listening in live as USDA Commissioner Brooke Rollins updates on a $12 billion aid package that the White House is building for America's farmers. This comes because a lot of farmers, as you know, are struggling to make ends meet between tariffs, inflation, and other high prices. So the White House says that they are trying to make sure that farmers are not affected by the president's trade policies, and they want to make sure that they are supported. So we're going to keep you updated on this situation, and as this process unfolds, we're going to let you know right here on Fox Local. But in the meantime, we're going to take you out live to a new historic place that has been designated as such, and our Chris Rosenthal is checking it out. We're going to be going there in just a little bit. That is going to be coming up. So Chris, I actually see you. It does look like you're ready. So let's go ahead and chat in with you about this situation. Great to see you as always. Tell me a little bit about it. I understand that we have 11 new properties on the Georgia Register of Historic Places, and one of those, the one you're at, is former Atlanta Mayor Maynard Jackson's childhood home.
Absolutely. 11 new properties, throughout Georgia, many of them in the Atlanta area. And this one behind me at 220 Sunset Avenue in Vine City is one of those properties. Like you said, it was first African-American mayor of Atlanta, Maynard Jackson's childhood home. This actually is a really significant area because the home next door to it, incidentally, happens to also be where Martin Luther King Jr. lived with his family in the late 60s. He was actually living here when he was assassinated. But we're here today to talk about this building right here. It actually was in disrepair. It was eventually owned by the West Side Future Fund, took control of it, and we will go enter in here, and it was slated for demolition, but then they took over. There was holes in the ceiling and lots of problems with it, but through about $3 million or so worth of investment, they were able to fix this up. But I talked earlier today with John Amon with the West Side Future Fund about just the historical significance and why this project is so important. Let's take a listen.
Maynard's mother was a real profile and courage. Unfortunately, Maynard's father passed in 1953. She went and taught at another university in North Carolina for a few years, but then came back and lived here. At that point, Maynard had gone on to Morehouse College. She was there with a couple of the other younger children. But at that point, she got tired of renting books from the segregated black library because they always had the lowest quality books. So she went to the main library, but then at that point became the first African-American to be issued a Fulton County library card. And so she desegregated the Fulton County Public Library system. And at the time she did it, and it was Maynard's younger sister that told me this story, the newspaper at the time published her address after she did that. And so there was literally Klansmen protesting her receiving that library card, staying in front of the home, back in 1959.
So much history happened at this house, and then you guys eventually got a hold of it. Talk to me talk to me about this process that it's now going through, and where it was like when you got it.
Yeah, when we purchased it, and really in response to me saying, preserve this, multifamily, reminding everyone of the history of this home. At the time we purchased it from the King Center, we're very grateful for that, but it had a demolition permit on it, and so we purchased it with a commitment to restore it as it stands today, so that and raising the funding for that, and then building it out. But as part of that, we committed to get it historically registered, and so we just recently, and very grateful that the Georgia is now in the Georgia Historic Register to signify its importance both to Georgia history and national history, and to ensure it's always preserved.
And it's not just going to be a place to look at, to drive by. I mean,
no, and back to our own frame of restoration without displacement, not only preserving the history, but also promoting home ownership in these neighborhoods. So we have a partnership in honor of Maynard's mother with Spelman College. And Spelman faculty and staff rent here at affordable rates, but with the goal within 2 years they become homeowners.
I think it tells a story about Atlanta and preservation, right? And what that means for particularly these African American neighborhoods, right? When we got to this project, it was about to be demolished, right? It was going to be sold and demolished. Because of the West Side Future Fund, we was not only able to buy it, purchase it, but actually begin the philanthropic work that it was going to take to save the building and the history that went with that.
Yeah, that was Derek Jordan. He consulted on this project. He's also a Vine City resident. So, yeah, this property, they've done a lot of work on it, and it will be lived in. This is, Maynard Jackson's mother was a Spelman College professor, and they are offering this for Spelman College faculty at a reduced rent rate. So I think they already have somebody's moved in, but then there we have still waiting for more folks to come move into this historic property here.
Chris, this is wonderful to see, and I love how you chatted about how there's just so much history that's unfolded at this Vine City residence. It's incredible to see. We're looking at right here, we're in a 3-box in case you can't see. We're looking at photos of Maynard Jackson here in our big box while you give us that tour down in the bottom right corner. And was there anything about this that really surprised you, that you just found unique or stuck out in your mind?
I think it's fascinating. They tried to do as much as they could to preserve the original, any original elements. It's a little tight walking through here, so it's a little hard to pick up on camera. But even these stairs, in order to keep it historic and keep it historically accurate for the Georgia Registry, they had these are as original. You can still see there's sort of original elements here. They had to plug these holes, and I mean these were the steps Maynard, and his family would use. And the neighborhood outside, looks much, somewhat similar, but a lot of changes still too. You can see Mercedes-Benz Stadium from outside. Of course, that wasn't here at the time, but. Yeah, I think they want to kind of turn this, into an area that honors the historic African American, civil rights legacy here.
Yeah, Chris, just wonderful that it has so much history. It's been renovated, and now it's going to go and serve those who work or live at Spelman. Yeah. The Spelman faculty. So that's wonderful. Chris, we really appreciate your time. We're going to see you back again in the 3 o'clock hour. Can't wait for another tour and to chat more about this, but thank you so much for joining us and giving us a tour. Okay, guys, coming up next, we're going to get a check of some other headlines that we're following. I want to tell you about an airbag recall and why you should take action if yours is on a list. That's coming up. Well, welcome back. I'm Ariel Onstad. Thanks so much for streaming with us. And I do want to acknowledge someone who actually was chatting with us for a bit in our YouTube. This was Selena. And if Selena, if you're still streaming along with us, you were talking about Rob DiRienzo's stories, saying once Daddy D sold, it was a restaurant that's about to close. The original restaurant, once the original restaurant sold, it's never been the same. And you talked a little bit about how you've missed the old owner's food. I'm sure you're not alone in that feeling. A lot of us, I think, can relate to the feeling of just not having what we're used to when things get sold off. And so, yeah, I commiserate. But I do want to move on and get you guys an update on something that's pretty important for your safety. If you drive a car and your car's airbag is on a recall list, millions of Americans could be risking their lives by not getting their recalled airbags fixed. A Wall Street Journal report shows in the past decade, 12 million vehicles were recalled for airbag issues across 37 orders, but about 2.6 million, so just over 2.5 million of those vehicles remain unfixed. The report shows accidents involving vehicles with recalled airbags led to 12 deaths during that period. The National Highway Traffic Safety Administration says it frequently communicates with manufacturers about recall completion rates, and it's urging increased notices to owners of these cars who have their airbags on the recall list. Data from the federal officials also show 1 in 3 cars recalled for any reason has problems that remain unfixed, and that can be a serious risk to your health. Obviously, in case of a car accident, you want your car's airbag to be functioning properly. Okay, guys, I'm going to bring you back out here live where we have Tom Haynes here with us as we get ready for our 3 o'clock streaming hour. So, Tom, what are you working on?
Happy Monday, Ariel. Happy Monday to you guys. Thanks so much for streaming with us this afternoon on Fox Local. We got a busy 3 p.m. hour coming up. You just touched on the president of the White House announcing that huge farm aid package. That event still going on right now. There's also a new tool in the battle against Alzheimer's disease. This is something that touches my family, and I'm sure a lot of yours as well. We're going to speak to somebody from the National Alzheimer's Association about how to sharpen your brain and the signs to look out for as we age. It's an innovative new tool, and we're going to talk to them live coming up.
I have to say, Tom, when I was looking through some different guests and I saw that story, I thought that that would be something that would be really good to discuss, because we all want to keep our brains more plastic. And
this is going to blow your mind. It's very, very cool, and they're going to reveal exactly what it is straight ahead in the 3 p.m. hour.
Okay, cool. Well, you guys, let's take a live look outside. Tom, take it away, because I have to say, it looks a lot warmer than it feels out there on Lake Lanier.
Well, and it's been a pretty dreary start, Ariel, to our Monday morning, and now it looks like the sunshine has finally come through for our Monday afternoon. We're going to check in with meteorologist Jonathan Stacy coming up to see how the rest of this work week is going to unfold for us and whether some sunshine is finally in our forecast for a weekend. Wouldn't that be something? Jonathan is straight ahead. But right off the top here at 3 o'clock, as we thank you once again for streaming with us on Fox Local, I'm Tom Haynes joining you live in the Fox 5 Atlanta newsroom. So glad you're here on our streaming platform, Fox Local, or on our YouTube channel at fox5atlanta.com. Of course, we're on TikTok and on the radio 107.9 HD2 FM. We're certainly glad you're with us today. There is some drama unfolding this afternoon in Fulton County. This is surrounding that December 2nd runoff election. Apparently some shenanigans were going on, and now council is looking into that. Let's get out to Fox 5's Angelique Proctor, who is standing by live to tell us exactly what's behind all this today. Angelique? All right, some technical difficulties with Angelique's shot there. We're going to try to connect with her and bring you her live report coming up here in just a couple of minutes. But it involves the December, as I said, 2nd runoff in Fulton County. You're going to want to hear more about this because apparently there were some mishandlings of some ballots by some senior ranking officials there in Fulton County, and City Council's trying to get to the bottom of exactly what happened here. Angelique digging into that, and we'll hear from her straight ahead. There is a new development. A man is under arrest in the Bojangles restaurant murder. This was a shooting that happened over the weekend outside a Bojangles restaurant. It happened Sunday afternoon. Investigators say that that shooting followed some kind of fight between the victim and the alleged shooter. The family of the victim identified him as Dominique Goodman. He was apparently the father of one of the workers at this Bojangles restaurant. They said that Goodman was at the Bojangles because his daughter worked there, called home after her shift, and said that she got into some kind of argument with the shift manager. So Dad went to pick his daughter up, according to police. The family said that the shift manager came back and then got into some kind of argument with the dad. That dad was shot multiple times, we understand, according to police, by that shift manager inside the restaurant. So we're working to find out what exactly this man that opened fire, the charges he is going to face, and we'll bring you updates as soon as we get them. The man accused of murdering a Buckhead grandmother back in 2022 is now standing trial. His defense attorneys tried to put that off, but it was unsuccessful. Tyler Finger covering this case for us on this Monday. Tyler, tell us where we are in this trial and the circumstances behind this case.
Well, Tom, good afternoon to you. That trial was set to get underway today. They had a jury ready to go, and they were getting ready to do the jury selection process. They actually had brought them into the courtroom this morning, and we're going through to get ready to ask them questions to understand exactly what they were going to be dealing with, and also understand who these jurors were, these prospective jurors were, to try to seat them on a jury to be able to have the people needed to be able to conduct this trial. But a big shock, and that is because Antonio Brown, the suspect in this case, decided he did not want to go to trial after all and ended up pleading guilty. And get this, he actually apologized to the victim's family during the sentencing this afternoon. I want to take you into the courtroom. Prosecutors called this murder brutal, and they say that this was something that they hadn't seen. I mean, we have, obviously, I think they said somewhere over a dozen stab wounds at the time of the crime, and the judge wasn't swayed and ended up sentencing Brown to decades behind bars. The change of plea came just as Antonio Brown's murder trial was set to get underway, as I mentioned. It came 2 days shy of the 3rd anniversary of the death of 77-year-old Eleanor Bowles. Brown faced a dozen charges ranging from murder to armed robbery and burglary. Prosecutors say they were ready to begin jury selection when Brown opted for a non-negotiated plea. They say they had a lot of evidence, including DNA on the murder weapon and video of him driving away from the scene in the victim's vehicle, that they were ready to show jurors. They also said she was stabbed over a dozen times, as I mentioned. And just before the murder, prosecutors say Brown robbed a liquor store. His defense attorney said Brown has some mental and substance abuse issues. The victim's family told the judge how difficult her loss has been. After hearing from the victim's family, both sides, and Brown himself, the judge sentenced him to 2 life sentences with the possibility of parole, which would make him eligible for release in his 80s, about 60 years from now. Take a listen to a little bit of what everyone had to say.
I immediately ran up to the front door and I banged the door. She didn't answer. And then my next move instantly was, I'm going to go see if her car's here. Because if her car was gone, that would have meant she was out running an errand and maybe she lost her phone, and that would explain why she wasn't answering. So I ran behind the house, got into the gate, and the garage is detached from the house. The door was shut to get in the garage. I whipped open the garage door, flipped on the light, and her car was gone. And I had a half a second of relief, because I knew she was gone. She was just not here. And the next half second, I turned my head and I looked down, and she was dead on the ground.
Medical examiner would testify that Eleanor fought. Eleanor fought the person that tried to keep her from being able to have that Christmas that she was doing the shoplifting, that she was doing the shopping for.
My client does have some mental issues, Your Honor. Well, even though he had stated before that he was deemed competent to stand trial, we do believe that there are some mental as well as substance abuse issues that are present in Mr. Brown.
I just want to apologize. I don't think anyone should have to go through what happened to her.
And that last soundbite there, that was Antonio Brown apologizing to the victim's family. They were seated at the back of the courtroom because the first several rows had were basically being held for prospective jurors, but obviously with the change of plea, those prospective jurors were led out of the courtroom and everyone was just stayed seated where they were. This was a non-negotiated plea, so this wasn't a plea deal per se, because prosecutors were not offering any sort of deal to end this. They were ready to go to trial, as I mentioned. They say they had a lot of evidence. They had video and they had DNA. They had different experts ready to testify, and so they weren't really offering a deal in this case, because this is obviously a big story that made national headlines. I know our network, Fox News, had covered it along with some other major outlets, just because of the heinousness of this crime that happened not far from where we are up in Buckhead. This obviously happened at Eleanor Bowles's townhome community in her garage. Based off what we understand, it sounds like she may have just caught the car theft in action, and then unfortunately she ended up being brutally murdered, according to prosecutors, stabbed more than a dozen times. But the person who killed her rather, is now going to be spending decades behind bars. He was sentenced to 2 life sentences with the possibility of parole. So what does that mean? I mean, you hear 2 life sentences. That means after 30 years for each sentence, so 60 years total, he is eligible for parole. And at 86 years old, that will be the first time he can go towards the parole board, where they'll make a decision whether he can be released or not. That may or may not happen. So theoretically, this could be a complete life sentence where he'll never get out of prison again, Tom.
Tyler. Shocked so many people happening in this rather upscale neighborhood, as you said, in the Buckhead area, right off of I-75 on West Paces Ferry Road, I should say. It just shocked so many people. The nature of the crime, it exposed people's vulnerabilities when, they're walking into their own home, in this case into her garage, finding that man trying to break into her vehicle and then becoming the victim of this murder. Little consolation, I would say, to that family sitting in the courtroom, but at the very least, they finally have some closure in this case.
I mean, yeah, you're exactly right. I mean, this happened on December 10th, 2022. Today is December 8th. So we're just 2 days shy of the 3rd anniversary. The family was expecting a murder trial to unfold today, and they obviously getting some closure, not having to go through what all of the evidence was going to detail and exactly how she died. One of the people you heard from during that soundbite, the first person, the family, that was one of her sons. He is the one who actually discovered her body. He had been in contact with her throughout the day as he was driving down from where he lived in Washington, D.C. to come down to get ready for Christmas. He was going to spend the next several weeks here. She stopped responding. He worried that she had a heart attack, and ultimately when he got there, he saw the car was gone, and then a moment later looked down and saw her body on the ground. He said thankfully he doesn't have the image in his mind of just how brutal of attack this was, not realizing just exactly the severity of it, because he didn't realize all of that at that moment. He's thankful for that, because if you see the amount of blood that prosecutors say was out there, that would have been a traumatic event to be able to witness that. But he still had to find his mother murdered in her own home in the garage. This is, as you said, little consolation, but still, though, some justice. And when they did speak to the judge, telling the court exactly what they were hoping for, both sons did say that they wanted to see life sentences with the possibility of parole, the max of what was going to be given here.
Just so gut-wrenching and still so shocking on so many levels, but incredible insight, Tyler, as to what that son went through on his way down here to celebrate the holidays with his mother, only to discover what had happened. Go ahead.
And can I mention one more thing,
sure.
Tom?
Uh-huh.
One thing I haven't gotten to mention was prosecutors and the family was saying during this hearing today that she was in the process of putting up her Christmas tree, getting ready for her son to come down to get ready to celebrate. And I guess there were Christmas lists on the table next to the computer, and she was doing shopping online to be able to get ready for Christmas. And then unfortunately, she wasn't even able to celebrate the holiday because of what happened.
It's just something so many of us are doing right now, preparing for the holidays. So just so sad for this family. Your heart certainly goes out to them today as we learn the fate of that now accused murderer. Tyler, thanks. want to take you back to Washington now, where the president is in the cabinet room holding discussions on this $12 billion farm aid package. It's a major announcement today. This is going to be a big boost to farmers who of late have fallen victim to some of the president's tariff restrictions. You know, the president had just met with the Chinese president Xi Jinping, who agreed to buy more soybeans from our farmers here in the United States. But this $12 billion package will be a bridge of sorts to get them back on their feet. The president kind of detailed exactly what this package contains. Let's listen to what he had to say.
Very far down on energy. Energy's come. In fact, we hit a very important number, sacred number. We had 3 states in the last 2 days reported by our energy group, a group of very strong energy people, who said we hit $1.99 a gallon in 3 different states. And it's an amazing accomplishment because the gasoline prices are coming down. When gasoline comes down, everything, it's such a big category that when gasoline comes down, sort of everything sort of follows. But we inherited a mess. Affordability, but you can call it affordability or anything you want, but the Democrats caused the affordability problem, and we're the ones that are fixing it. So it's a very simple statement. They caused it, we're fixing it, and they have a tendency to just say this election's based on affordability, and nobody questions them, John. You know, nobody says, oh, well, what do you mean by that? But they just say the word. They never say anything else because they caused the problem, but we're fixing the problem. And we're pleased to be joined today by many of the wonderful members of the farming community, as well as the Secretary of Agriculture, Brooke Rollins. Brooke, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent. Thank you very much, Scott. Senator John Bozeman. Thank you, John. Good job. John Hoeven. Thank you, John. And Deb Fisher. Thank you very much. As well as Representative Austin Scott, who's been with us right from the beginning. Thank you, Austin. Good job. I'm delighted to announce this afternoon that the United States will be taking a small portion of the hundreds of billions of dollars we receive in tariffs. We are making a lot of money from countries that took advantage of us for years. They took advantage of us like nobody's ever seen. Our deficits are way down because of tariffs. I guess because of the election. Because without the election, you wouldn't have tariffs. You'd be sitting here losing your shirt. But we're taking in billions. We're really taking in trillions of dollars, if you think about it, Scott, because the real number is, you know, when you think of all the money being poured into the country for new auto plants and all of the other things, AI. So what we're doing is we're taking a relatively small portion of that, and we're going to be giving and providing it to the farmers in economic assistance. And we love our farmers, and as you know, the farmers like me, because you know, based on voting trends, you could call it voting trends or anything else, but they're great people. They're the backbone of our country. So we're going to use that money to provide $12 billion in economic assistance to American farmers. $12 billion is a lot of money, Merrill. What do you think? Peanuts for you, though, right? Peanuts. She's a farmer of rice. This relief will provide much-needed certainty to farmers as they get this year's harvest to market and look ahead to next year's crops. And it'll help them continue their efforts to lower food prices for American families. And again, we inherited something that we inherited the worst inflation in the history of our country, and we're taking care of it. Farmers are an indispensable national asset, part of the backbone of America. I've always felt it so strongly. They're so important. Unfortunately, under Sleepy Joe Biden, he's a sleepy guy, our farmers were crushed by the worst inflation in modern history and crippling restrictions on energy, water, and countless other necessities for farmers. And what they did to the farmer in terms of putting the brakes on was just absolutely unacceptable. In my first term, we had an agricultural trade surplus by a lot. We had a big surplus. meaning we were exporting American agricultural products all over the world, making a net profit, and in many cases a very substantial profit. He came in and ruined it. Biden turned that surplus into a gaping agricultural deficit that continues to this day, but we're knocking it down. It's starting to go very good. In fact, China, as you know, is buying a tremendous amount of soybeans, and the number, I spoke with President Xi recently, very recently, and I think he's going to do even more than he promised to do. So I think the relationship is a very good one. I think he's going to do more than he promised to do, and what he promised to do is a lot. So we're very happy with that. In the last year, Biden bankruptcies rose by 55%, having to do with farms. So farm bankruptcies under Joe Biden went up 55%. That's not good. But now we're once again in a position where a president is able to put farmers first. But unfortunately, I'm the only president that does that. On day one, I terminated the Green New Scam. Energy prices are down. Gasoline prices are down. We've slashed record numbers of crippling regulations, and we're working on huge trade deals already, securing $60 billion in agricultural purchase commitments. And, you know, Biden made none. He didn't make any trade deals having to do with the farmers or any of it. It's crazy. China committed. He was the worst president in the history of our country, by the way, in case anybody has any questions. China committed to over $40 billion of soybean purchases, and that's a commitment. And I asked President Xi if he could even up it, and I think he'll do that. I mean, not a commitment. The $40 billion is a commitment, but the soybean farmers are quite happy. Since my successful meeting in South Korea with President Xi, purchases have been made and soybeans are being exported out of the United States to China as we speak. And I say that our soybeans, I told this to President Xi, our soybeans are more nutritious than competitors. Somebody said, is that a Trump statement or is that real? In fact, you know who asked me that question? President Xi asked me that question. He said, really, I had never heard of it. And he was a food purchaser for a long time. But that's what I hear. And Japan agreed to $8 billion in purchases of corn, soybeans, ethanol, fertilizer, aviation, biofuel, and rice. You know, Japan never bought rice from anybody else. It's like a very important thing to them. And they agreed to buy rice, okay?
Absolutely.
So I also proudly signed into law the largest tax cuts in history, and the one big, beautiful bill, the monumental tax relief bill that is benefiting very, very strongly, benefiting the American farmer. And I think also for farmers, we have, as you know, and we got this, the estate tax, or the death tax, as they call it, on farmers, on small businesses. You don't have to pay it anymore. A lot of farms would, you love your children, and your children are great, and they want to be farmers, and you leave the farm with your children, and a lot of farms are, you know, sort of cash poor, land-rich cash poor, and the kids would go to the local bank or to any bank, and they'd borrow money to pay the estate tax, and they'd end up losing the farm. They go bankrupt, and a lot of death too. You know, literally, because they love their farm and they love their business and they love that way of life, they end up committing suicide. A lot of suicides. We have no more estate tax. How about that? Do you have children?
I do.
Well, let them know. Now, if you love your children, then it's good. If you don't love your children, you don't have to leave them anything. It doesn't matter what I just said.
They're still young. I still love them.
I have a feeling you love them.
All right, that's President Trump speaking in the cabinet room not too long ago at the White House. In fact, the event's still going on now live. We're monitoring the comments of the president, but the crux of this meeting was to gather his economic folks and agricultural folks together to announce this huge farm aid package to the tune of $12 billion going out to our nation's farmers. The president says that they are one of his major backers in this latest election, and while they have backed him politically, they have been feeling the brunt of these tariffs and these trade policies, challenging them and their bottom line. The president offering this as much needed help to get the farmers back on track. And he mentioned rice and soybeans and things like that. So some, as I said, much welcome relief coming to our nation's farmers. A $12 billion package announced by the president today. What the president is not talking about right now is peace between Russia and Ukraine. That is a thorny and sticky issue that is taking much longer than those in his administration and the president himself have anticipated. The peace talks hanging by a thread, we understand this afternoon. This coming after a weekend of difficult conversations between Ukrainian officials and Special Envoy Steve Witkoff, who, as you know, was just in Moscow meeting with Vladimir Putin. Russian airstrikes on civilian targets are intensifying, we are being told. The president saying that he's not happy with the Ukrainian president's response to the latest American peace proposal, adding pressure as negotiations move slowly forward. In fact, the president says that he doesn't think Zelensky has even read the proposal. In the Wall Street Journal today, European leaders want some skin in the game. They met in London over the weekend to talk about how Europe can also add or influence this peace deal between Russia and Ukraine and possibly try to move it forward. There were indications that the president is preparing to walk away from the talks if they remain stalled, but despite that, the White House says that a deal could be in the offing and they will continue to try. That is, at least for now. As we continue here on this Monday afternoon, we're going to check in on the weather. It was kind of a dreary weekend. We feel like we've been in the clouds for days now, and we need to see some sunshine. Looks like that is finally happening as we take a live look across downtown Atlanta. The clouds have broken. The sunshine is out in many parts of our state. We're going to check in with meteorologist Jonathan Stacy to see how the rest of our work week is going to unfold. We'll be back. Welcome back, everybody. Thanks so much for streaming with us here in the 3 p.m. hour on Fox Local. I'm Tom Haines with you live in the Fox 5 Atlanta newsroom. Appreciate you using our Fox Local app to stream our programming today, or if you're watching at home on your television, we're certainly glad you're here. Our YouTube audience is here as well. We appreciate your comments. We're reading all of them in the chat room there, or on the radio, 107.9 HD2 FM. Certainly glad you're listening to us here today. The news never stops. I want to get back to our top story that we hit right off the top of the program, and that is some drama unfolding in Fulton County. You remember they just had a runoff election on December the 2nd. Apparently, This situation involves some poll workers. Fox 5's Angelique Proctor is standing by at the early voting and public viewing area. Angelique, tell us a little bit more about what's happening here.
Well, good afternoon to you, Tom. Hopefully you can see and hear me just fine. The first thing that Chairman Rob Pitts said today is that there is no perfect election, and clearly December 2nd was not a perfect election. In fact, Fulton County is now saying that one of their temporary employees was involved in what they are calling an incident that they believe could have possibly broken the law. So let me get into some of the specifics. According to the election officials, this did happen during that runoff election, December the 2nd. And because of this alleged impropriety, there is a recount of all of the votes that were cast in Fulton County on December the 2nd. So that includes the mayor of South Fulton, the mayor of Sandy Springs, many of the Atlanta elections that were all in a runoff. All of those are being recounted today. The Board of Elections met this morning at 8:45. They started the recount promptly at 9 a.m. That recount is still underway behind me here. But let's go now to Nadine Williams, who is the director of the Fulton County Board of Elections and Registration, as she talks about specifically what was alleged to have happened.
It was reported by the poll manager that one of the poll workers had scanned additional ballots into the scanner. This matter is under SOS investigation. We have given all the information possible that we have to the Secretary of State's Office for Investigation. The total ballots that we have deemed to have been scanned is 4. It will not change the election results per our calculation.
Now, that poll worker, we are told, was walked out of Dobbs Elementary School. That is the precinct where she apparently was working, walked out by the Fulton County Police on Election Day, the moment that this happened. And as you heard the director say, the Secretary of State's office is investigating this. They have been looking into it ever since last Tuesday, and they will decide, along with Fulton County Police, if there will be criminal charges here. Now, what we know so far is that this employee apparently scanned not only her ballot, but ballots for 4 of her family members who were not present at that Dobbs Elementary School precinct, family members that she says lived with her. And so Fulton County Police and the Secretary of State's office is looking into all of this. But one of the Board of Elections members says in this case, everything really worked out because someone saw something and said something.
Our system worked. The fact that you had the posters, you had trained staff, they saw something, said something, you reported it, we were able to catch it. So I just applaud you for having those mechanisms in place.
And so they are trying to certify the election that was supposed to happen by 5 o'clock. I am told that the recount is still underway and the certification will happen at some point. But there are lots of people gathered here at this location, including Chairman Pitts, the police department, and lots of people that are monitoring this situation and want to make sure that everything goes as it's supposed to. The one thing that they did stress is, even if this did happen and it is true and this woman is charged, it would not have changed the election results. Tom?
Yeah, this is a sensitive issue, though, for a lot of people who pay attention to voting, the integrity of elections. You know, it wasn't too long ago we reported, in fact, it was just last month, that Chairman Pitts refused a request from the Justice Department to hand over records from the 2020 election. And while a lot of people say, you know, case closed in 2020, transparency is really important to voters. They want to know that when they go to the polls, their vote is counting, and only their vote is counting, not people who may not be supposed to voting in any given election. So, you know, the chairman in the interest of transparency, opening this particular case up to you guys, but it's something that's kind of dogged Fulton County in the past as it relates to elections. No one knows that better than you, Angelique.
Well, that is something that Chairman Pitts is pushing back on, that this was one individual. There is no trend here. There is no pattern, or this was not happening at a lot of different areas. This is one precinct, and they feel like they have turned it over to the officials, and the chips will fall where they may. So if by chance that criminal charges result, I think you're going to see the chairman and many Fulton County officials supporting that, because they know how important these elections are, and they know how many people are watching Fulton County. And as you said, election integrity is of the utmost importance.
Everybody's watching, especially us, and especially you. Great reporting there, Angelique Proctor, for us live in Fulton County. Angelique, thanks so much. Turning back now to our weather, Jonathan Stacy has been mapping out sort of what lies ahead in our forecast. We've sort of been stuck in this cloudy, soggy, chilly pattern, but by the looks of it outside today, looks like the sun is making a return. Question is, for how long? Here's Jonathan.
Clouds continue to dominate the day. Hopefully we can crack some space in them by evening, but if not by evening, definitely by tomorrow afternoon. You can see here any rain that we had earlier this morning is now pushed to the east, and it's running into some colder air as it climbs up the eastern seaboard, and for even portions of North Carolina, but certainly the Virginias, they're dealing with their second batch of snow for the season. No wintry weather for us. By 6 o'clock, you can see here temperatures already falling down from their highs somewhere close to 50 degrees. By 6 o'clock, we're at 45 here in Atlanta, 43 Canton, 46 Eaton, the same for Athens, 41 in Cornelia. You've already snuck down into the high 30s here in Blairsville. Everybody's going there as we go through the overnight hours. We'll stop the clock at midnight. Shift workers, bundle up. You won't have to worry about the rain, but you'll have to worry about the cold air. Temperatures feeling like they're already near freezing even before we cross over into a new day. New day, new problems? Well, same old problems like Sunday. Fog will likely move in, especially if those winds settle down out east, but with the wind still going, I don't think fog will be as prevalent as it was Sunday. This morning we had fog across the far northern tier, and once again that will be an area that we'll be watching down across the metro area and for points out to the east along 85 and 20. By and large, it's just a frigid start to the morning. By noon, we can see here things are starting to warm up ever so carefully here. By the time we get to the noon hour, we're at 46 degrees, so still below average, with a hope of hitting a high temperature of 50 degrees here in Atlanta, 52 in Rome. But here's what you have. You have plenty of sunshine, and I think the sunshine is going to help us out. Temperatures are going back down to the 30s to kick off Wednesday morning, but Wednesday afternoon, that's when we're going to bring out something called the 60s. Meanwhile, your chances for rain, they're fairly meager. Over the next few days, we're going to have dry conditions taking over the area. This isolated chance for a shower on Thursday is indicated by a frontal passage, and then another frontal passage tries to sneak in next Monday. Those fronts are just going to kind of rework the atmosphere and knock the temperature down. So we'll reach a high of 60 degrees on Monday, but then it will fall to 55 degrees by afternoon for Thursday, 57 for Friday after another front moves through. The mornings are going to be frigid no matter how you shake it, especially with the absence of thick cloud cover. Plenty of sunshine for the weekend after another front rolls through, but I think that one will definitely do a doozy on us as it knocks the temperatures back down into the 30s, and by afternoon, we'll struggle to break past the 50-degree mark.
Looking forward to a sunny weekend ahead, Jonathan. Thanks so much. When we come back, the story we talked about at the top of the program, if you have a loved one suffering from Alzheimer's disease, you know how devastating it can be. Well, the Alzheimer's Association has come up with a brand new innovative tool that we're really excited to share with you. And we're going to be joined by somebody from the association next. Welcome back, everybody. Certainly appreciate you streaming with us here in the 3 p.m. hour of Fox Local. I'm Tom Haines with you live in the Fox 5 Atlanta newsroom. As we get older, maintaining our brain health becomes super important. Perhaps you have a family member who suffers from Alzheimer's or dementia. I know I do. My mother suffers from just that in its advanced stages. The Alzheimer's Association of Georgia is coming out with a brand new tool that can help. Leslie Holland is with the organization, joins us now live. Leslie, thanks so much for streaming with us here on Fox Local. Tell us more about this new tool and what it's all about.
So we're real excited about this new tool because it is online. It's easily accessible to everyone. You can reach it through your desktop or on the mobile devices, as everyone's on their mobile devices, and it helps you establish some healthy habits that will lead to healthier brain. So one cool thing about it is that it's available for everyone. It doesn't matter if you're a caregiver, if you're living with a disease, or if you're just, a person who wants to make sure that you're aging well and aging healthy, and just wants to establish some habits that will help your brain age better.
Is this something we can do to stave off Alzheimer's or dementia? Have researchers come up with anything to sort of either delay this disease, or what's the status of them even finding a cure?
So we are closer than ever to a cure. We actually now have 2 medications that have been FDA approved that do slow down the progress of the disease. As far as risk reduction, we are finding through research that there's almost 60% of dementia cases can be delayed or prevented with lifestyle factors. We had a giant research study called the U.S. Pointer Study, and the results came out in July, and it showed that healthy lifestyle interventions do make a big difference when it comes to preserving brain health and keeping yourself healthy as you age.
Yeah, Alzheimer's, as you know, probably better than anyone, it's a devastating disease. It affects some 7 million Americans. Where can I find this resource? In other words, is it an app that I can download on my phone, or do I go to your website? How do I get to it?
Yeah, so you can go to alz.org/habit builder, and it's there. What you can do is it gives you 3 to 5 questions that you can answer about your lifestyle as it is, and then you can choose a couple of the habits that it talks about to decide which ones fit into your lifestyle and which ones you want to work on. Then you can print it out. You can save the results because it comes up with a plan that is tailored specifically for you and your lifestyle.
I mentioned that I have a family member, my mother, who battles advanced stage dementia. Tell us more about Alzheimer's dementia, its impact on families, and how we can sort of come together to support one another and the person we're caring for.
Sure. And, that's a question that gets asked so much during the holidays because people come home, they haven't seen family members in a while, and they realize that something is wrong. So Alzheimer's is simply one form of dementia. So if you think of it as dementia is an umbrella, Alzheimer's is one form under the umbrella, and it is the most common form of dementia. The Alzheimer's Association has a 24/7 helpline, which is an amazing resource, especially during the holidays. Their calls tend to go way up because, again, as we talked about, people are coming home and they're noticing things that they haven't seen in their loved ones before. That helpline is staffed with their licensed counsel or licensed social workers, LCSWs, and they can answer almost every question. They can help you figure out what to do if you see signs. They can help you get resources. And what they do is they will, when it comes to resources, they will refer you to to your local offices and your local chapter, wherever you are. So in Georgia, that's us at the Georgia chapter. And then we reach out and we will help in, every way that we can, because we are very into community support and family support and just helping at every stage of the illness.
Well, and to your point, I mean, caring with somebody like my mother, for example, is not something that any one of us could necessarily handle, unfortunately, at this stage. She's fortunate enough to be in a facility where she has caregivers, people who are experienced with Alzheimer's and dementia and can care for her properly. There are 5 of us in our family, so we're all able to kind of pool in and provide that support for my mother. But what about families who don't have a huge amount of brothers and sisters who can chip in and have more limited means and need to find help for their loved one? A place where they can go to receive 24/7 care. I know how expensive that can be. Are there resources like the Alzheimer's Association of Georgia can point them in certain directions, or maybe funding that's available to help support these families?
Absolutely. We can speak with the families. We can give them, there are care consultations, and you can get a care consultation and kind of try to figure out next steps for your loved ones and what is best for them. We also can connect you with resources in the state. In Georgia, we're in a really unique position because we have worked and passed so much legislation that helps caregivers and helps families dealing with dementia. And our state has been so attentive to the amount of just the growing numbers of people who are being diagnosed with Alzheimer's and other forms of dementia. Our state has been really on the ball as far as that's concerned. So yes, when you reach out to the Alzheimer's Association, we can and will get you in touch with local resources, both financially. You can have respite care. There are all sorts of things out there for both the caregivers and the person living with the disease. It really doesn't matter what your income is. There are options and are resources at every level of income. And just for caregivers to know that they are not alone. We are here for you. You don't have to have a big family, but there is help and you are not alone. We can get you in touch with support groups, but support is just key for caregivers especially.
That is true, because even if your loved one is in a place, you too need support, and you too need to kind of deal with the whole drama that is, unfortunately, Alzheimer's and dementia as it affects our loved ones. Great information this afternoon. Leslie Holland with the Alzheimer's Association of Georgia. Great tool to exercise our brains, something we all need to do. We appreciate you being with us this afternoon.
Thank you so much for having us.
All right, we'll continue here in just a moment. Welcome back, everybody. Thanks so much for streaming with us this afternoon. I'm Tom Haynes with you live in the Fox 5 Atlanta newsroom. You know, 11 properties have been added to the Georgia Register of Historic Places. So much history all around our state, so much to see and experience. One of them is 220 Summit Avenue in Vine City. It's where Maynard Jackson grew up, and in that place alone, it's just swarming with history. Our Chris Rosenthal is out and about to show us a little bit more about what we're talking about this afternoon. Chris?
Yeah, hey, good afternoon, Tom. Yeah, I'm at 220 Sunset Avenue here in Vine City, and you're right, it is definitely swarming with history. In fact, the home right next to the home we're talking about here, this was actually Martin Luther King Jr.'s house that he lived in the late 60s. He was living here when he was assassinated. But this is the home that we're talking about today that was added to the Georgia Registry of Historic Places. This was where Maynard Jackson lived as a child. His parents built this home. His mother, Irene Dobbs Jackson, very important woman. She was a Spelman professor, and she was also instrumental in integrating the library system, first African-American woman with a library card in Atlanta. This home has been renovated. West Side Future Fund has actually come in here and with some very generous donations from the Blank Foundation and other organizations have renovated this home for Spelman faculty to live in. But I talked with Derek Jordan of the West Side Future Fund just about the importance of the history here, preserving the history, and what it really took to get this property, which was ready to be demolished, livable. Let's listen in.
I think it tells a story about Atlanta and preservation, right, and what that means for particularly these African American neighborhoods, right? When we got to this project, it was about to be demolished, right? It was going to be sold and demolished. Because of the West Side Future Fund, we was not only able to buy it, purchase it, but actually begin the philanthropic work that it was going to take to save the building and the history that went with that. You know, this project represents a first for many things in Atlanta. First black mayor, being right next door to Martin Luther King home. These are not places that in any other neighborhood that would be ever demolished. You know, it would have been on the historic register. Because of the neglect historically of these kind of communities, these assets are always at risk. And West Side Future Fund was able to preserve that and do the work that it takes to keep it here. The windows have been handcrafted windows. Today in construction, what you have is a vinyl windows, basically plastic. But these are wood made. You can't go in Home Depot, you can't go to Lowe's and get this. There's some guy or woman that sat down and was able to have the skill to actually build this frame by frame, placing the window inside. The detail here is a part of that kind of historic character. Most important here is this is done by hand. The work that you see is done by hand. The sanding is going to be done by hand because you're also trying to preserve the wood itself because you can't replace this wood. So this is one of the key parts, and one of the difficult things to do is making sure you preserve the wood. When Martin Luther King would leave his house, he would not only leave his house, he would pass this place. And it looks the same today as it looked then. The steps, the topography, maybe the landscaping, right? We have not changed the environment, so to speak, so it's a preserved environment. So even though we had to do a lot of work on the inside, the actual environment that this project still sits in is the same way it sat 1950, 1960, 1970, when the King family was here, when Maynard Jackson was here. That's what the historical significance of the project is, right, and for the neighborhood.
Yeah, definitely historical significance that will live on in the future. You know, that's this is now several apartments. One of them's already occupied, and they're taking applications for the rest of them for Spelman faculty to live in.
All right, 220 Sunset Avenue in Vine City, rightly on the historic register. Officially recognized now as significant in American history, and indeed it is. Chris Rosenthal, live for us this afternoon. Chris, thanks. Well, 'tis the season to give back to our community through our Toys for Tots program. Fox 5, a proud sponsor. We were out at our big toy drop over the weekend. Meteorologist Jonathan Stacy at a Publix grocery store, I believe, Jonathan, helping collect toys for boys and girls. So easy when you walk into Publix. They make it so you can grab a toy, check out, and then drop it right in one of those boxes nearby.
Super simple, Tom. Here's the deal. Everybody during this time of the year is coming to the grocery store, and you're likely, because they're everywhere, going to a Publix. We're here at the Publix in Decatur off of East Ponce de Leon, and yes, people are flowing in, and when you come in, have a toy with you so you can drop it in the box. We are about to wrap this thing up. There's 17 days until December 25th, until Santa Claus comes to town, but there are only 6 days before we wrap up this year's Toys for Tots driving. And you know it takes us, Fox 5, Publix, along with our local Marines to make this happen. So I have 3 of them joining us right now. Introduce yourselves quickly.
Staff Sergeant Shank.
Sergeant Thomas. Sergeant Hughes.
Okay, we have 3 of these, so we're going to do a little bit of a pop quiz, Tom, just to help get the information out there, spread the word, so you can bring some of the season's greetings in the way of toys to this toy drive. Okay, up first, is there a certain age group that we need to focus on for the greatest need for toys at this time?
Preferably 3 to 5 and 6 to 10.
Okay, so the littlest ones and the biggest ones. Yeah. That said, if I'm torn between getting a girl toy, a boy toy, what should I settle on?
Gender neutral toys.
Okay, a toy for any, any and all. And finally, how long has the Marine Corps been leading this effort?
So it started in 1947, but the Marine Corps adopted it in 1948.
You know your history.
I sure do.
You got it right there. And so why don't you be a part of this literally decades-long initiative to really bring a smile and to really warm the hearts of children all over the metro Atlanta area whose parents just need a little bit of extra help this year. You can do it easily by bringing your toy to any Publix location across the Atlanta metro area. Once again, it goes all the way through this week until Sunday. Sunday, December the 14th is the last day you can bring your new unwrapped toy and drop it in the box.
It's something Fox 5, Jonathan, as you know, is proud to be a part of. We're out there every year collecting toys for little boys and girls in need. We see the whole process from Publix to the distribution center out to those folks that distribute those toys. Great job, Jonathan, and the United States Marines. Thank you so much for your service and your time. Appreciate it so much. And we appreciate you being with us today here on Fox Local. It's been a busy afternoon of news. The sun was shining for a couple of seconds, but as we leave you, we're going to take another live look outside across downtown Atlanta, where it looks like the clouds are moving back in. Have a great afternoon. We'll see you right back here tomorrow.